Alo, 123. Alo, 123.
Hello, Ruby. Just got to get
Hello, Miss Susan. Giao xin
Hello.
kính chào các thầy cô ạ. Ban tổ chức xin phép được tách truyền truyền âm thanh và hình ảnh một chút ạ. Cho em xin phép được hỏi là ở các đầu cầu có nhìn thấy rõ hình ảnh và nghe được âm thanh của ban tổ chức không ạ? Nếu mà có thì các thầy cô vui lòng gọi yes vào trong chat box giúp em với ạ.
Thanks, love.
Dạ vâng ạ, em cảm ơn các thầy cô. Chương trình hội thảo thì sẽ
Đường truyền
được
bị
bắt
sao
đầu
đấy bạn?
sau 8 phút nữa vào lúc 14:30 ạ. Và chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu sau 8 phút nữa ạ. So hello, Miss Susan. We will start our workshop until 2:30. So we have 8 minutes more. Thank you
I
for
know.
joining.
I'm glad I could get in. I'm just trying to find the background.
We got a background, Miss Susan.
I'm just trying to find it.
Okay.
I had it already, but I had to reboot because the computer was very strange this morning.
Okay, I see.
Right, I've got it. It's in project space. Okay. Image. Let's see it, dear.
Vâng ạ, xin chào các thầy cô ạ. Chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu chương trình sau 5 phút nữa ạ.
It won't open. I'm trying to add it.
Okay.
But it won't open. Very strange. This was the one that corrupted my PowerPoint yesterday, so maybe it's because I'm nervous.
Is it okay? No, not yet, right?
I'm throwing some others out just in case that's why it won't load. No, it won't load. No, I know how to do it. I've done it a million times, but I can't do it. It won't let me do it.
If it's not okay, so just try to give the background like it is right now. It's fine, Susan.
Yeah. It's very strange.
You know, sometimes there's some mistake that you cannot deal with it, so it's okay.
Yeah, I think I'll forget it because otherwise I'm not going to be able to start in a calm way. It just won't. I've got lots of other ones, you see. But I can't load it. It won't load. Got plenty of other ones.
Oh, it's okay. Just focus on presentation.
Which one do you prefer?
Maybe the natural background.
This one?
Yeah, it looks fresh.
It's certainly early morning, or this one.
Thưa các thầy cô là chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu sau 2 phút nữa ạ. Nên là em xin kính mời các thầy cô sẽ ổn định xuống ngồi ở trước màn hình ạ. Và chúng ta sẽ bắt đầu vào đúng lúc 2 giờ 30 phút ạ.
I could have this one. This one loads okay.
Okay.
Or this one. Do you like this one?
Maybe the city look better. A little bit colorful.
Yeah, okay.
But I've got the flag coming out of my head. It's very strange because they're all in the same file, but it won't let me do it. Anyway, I've got to go now because I have to load up that one.
Okay, so I will have some introduction first, and then I will invite you to start the presentation. Okay. Dạ vâng, xin kính chào các thầy cô ạ. Xin được nồng nhiệt chào mừng các quý thầy cô trên toàn quốc đang có mặt tham dự vào hội nghị trực tuyến về phương pháp học tập thông qua dự án trong bộ sách giáo khoa tiếng Anh Global Success của Nhà xuất bản Giáo dục Việt Nam ngày hôm nay ạ. Em xin được tự giới thiệu, em là Đỗ Thu Giang, đại diện của ban tổ chức đến từ Nhà xuất bản Giáo dục Việt Nam. Và buổi hội thảo của Nhà xuất bản hôm nay thì sẽ được tổ chức thông qua nền tảng Zoom webinar và đồng thời cũng được livestream trên kênh YouTube chính thức của kênh Sách Mềm. Và trong hội thảo ngày hôm nay thì em xin trân trọng được giới thiệu có sự tham gia của giáo sư tiến sĩ Hoàng Văn Vân, là tổng chủ biên từ lớp 1 đến lớp 12 của bộ sách giáo khoa. Thầy Vân đã xuất hiện trên màn hình ạ. Vâng, chào thầy ạ. Và em cũng xin được giới thiệu là có sự tham gia của các thầy cô giáo là chủ biên và tác giả của các khối lớp của bộ sách giáo khoa tiếng Anh Global Success, cũng như là các thầy cô là báo cáo viên, là trainer đã tham gia các chương trình giới thiệu tập huấn sách giáo khoa trên toàn quốc trong thời gian qua và cả thời gian sắp tới nữa. Và em cũng xin được giới thiệu các đại diện đến từ tập đoàn giáo dục Pearson, có chị Hường là đại diện ở Việt Nam, và có cô Susan Hilliard sẽ là giảng viên, người speaker trong buổi hội thảo ngày hôm nay. Và đặc biệt hơn nữa đó là sự tham gia của hàng ngàn các thầy cô giáo trung học cơ sở và trung học phổ thông đến từ 63 tỉnh thành trên toàn quốc. Xin được cảm ơn các thầy cô rất là nhiều vì đã dành thời gian một cái buổi chiều thứ Bảy ngày hôm nay để tham dự cái hội thảo chuyên đề của xuất bản Giáo dục Việt Nam. Và vâng, thưa các thầy các cô, thì thực hiện đúng theo những cái cam kết đồng hành của Nhà xuất bản Giáo dục Việt Nam đối với các thầy cô giáo và các nhà trường hiện đang sử dụng bộ sách giáo khoa tiếng Anh Global Success, thì hàng năm thì bên cạnh những cái buổi tập huấn tại các địa phương thì Nhà xuất bản Giáo dục Việt Nam cũng có tổ chức những cái chuỗi hội thảo chuyên đề với sự tham gia của các chuyên gia trong nước và nước ngoài về những cái phương pháp giảng dạy, về những cái kinh nghiệm giảng dạy tiếng Anh dành cho các thầy các cô, và từ đó có thể tập huấn, có thể chia sẻ với các thầy cô những phương pháp, những kinh nghiệm làm sao để có thể sử dụng và khai thác bộ sách giáo khoa tiếng Anh Global Success một cách hiệu quả nhất, và từ đó thì cải thiện những cái chất lượng của hoạt động giảng dạy và hướng tới cái mục tiêu cao nhất, đó là mang đến những cái kết quả tốt hơn cho học sinh của chúng ta. Và vâng, các thầy cô ơi, có thể là các thầy cô vẫn nhớ là tháng 6 vừa rồi thì Nhà xuất bản Giáo dục Việt Nam cũng đã tổ chức một cái hội thảo online với chủ đề là phát triển các kỹ năng thế kỷ 21 dành cho học sinh. Và tiếp nối cái chỗ hội thảo đó thì ngày hôm nay Nhà xuất bản Giáo dục Việt Nam tiếp tục tổ chức hội thảo này với chủ đề là phương pháp học tập thông qua dự án trong bộ sách giáo khoa tiếng Anh Global Success. Và trong hội thảo ngày hôm nay thì speaker sẽ tập trung vào cả phần nguyên tắc lý thuyết như là những cái nguyên tắc, những thực tiễn thực hành trong việc áp dụng phương pháp học tập theo dự án trong quá trình giảng dạy. Theo đó thì diễn giả của chúng ta sẽ chia sẻ đến các quý thầy cô những thuận lợi của phương pháp này. Đó là khi mà học sinh được lấy làm trung tâm thì các em sẽ được tham gia một cách tích cực và nhiều nhất vào những hoạt động học tập. Và tuy nhiên bên cạnh đó thì cô cũng có chỉ ra những cái khó khăn của các thầy các cô khi triển khai và áp dụng phương pháp này, khi mà đối với những học sinh mà như ở Việt Nam chúng ta là học tiếng Anh như một ngôn ngữ thứ hai, và ở nhiều nơi thì trình độ của học sinh còn hạn chế, và qua đó thì cô cũng sẽ chia sẻ những cái đề xuất, những cái giải pháp và gợi ý để làm sao mà có thể áp dụng những cái phương pháp này hiệu quả hơn và khắc phục những cái khó khăn đó. Và nội dung chính của buổi hội thảo ngày hôm nay thì diễn giả sẽ trình bày trong vòng 90 phút ạ. Và sau đó thì sẽ là 30 phút dành cho phần Q&A. Và trong suốt quá trình mà diễn giả trình bày thì nếu các thầy cô có bất cứ câu hỏi nào thì vui lòng mà sẽ sử dụng tính năng Q&A của Zoom webinar, và để có không bị trôi các cái tin nhắn đó thầy cô ạ. Và sau khi mà trình bày xong thì diễn giả sẽ trả lời và tương tác với các thầy cô. Và cuối buổi ngày hôm nay thì ban tổ chức cũng sẽ gửi đến các quý thầy cô là cái mã QR code cũng như là cái đường link tham gia khảo sát sau tập huấn. Thì sau khi mà kết thúc thì các thầy cô vui lòng là sẽ truy cập vào đường link khảo sát, hoàn thành phần khảo sát để được nhận cái chứng chỉ của ngày hôm nay. Và vâng, kính thưa các thầy cô, thì trước khi bắt đầu phần trình bày của diễn giả thì em xin phép được giới thiệu một chút về diễn giả ngày hôm nay. Thì cô Susan Hilliard là chuyên gia đào tạo của Tập đoàn Giáo dục Pearson, là đơn vị đồng hành và hợp tác với Theo xuất bản Giáo dục Việt Nam trong việc xuất bản bộ sách giáo khoa Global Success ở cấp trung học cơ sở và trung học phổ thông. Cô thì đã có rất là nhiều năm kinh nghiệm ở những cái vai trò khác nhau, từng là giáo viên, từng là trưởng khoa, diễn giả, nhà nghiên cứu và là chuyên gia đào tạo. Thì cô cũng là người sáng lập và là giám đốc của CELTA, là Susan Hilliard English Language Teachers Academy. Và hôm nay thì cô sẽ chia sẻ với chúng ta về cái nội dung của hội thảo. Vâng, so Mrs. Susan, welcome you to our online workshop today. And thank you very much for being here and joining the workshop and being our speaker today. And we strongly believe that your presentation today will deliver valuable knowledge and experience to our teachers of English, so that can help our teachers to improve the quality of teaching activities in the class. So all the teachers, please send some hearts to welcome our speaker today, Mrs. Susan Hilliard. Please take the stage and say hello to our teachers, please.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. I'm very excited to be here this morning. I'm checking in. I'm beaming in. Hello, everybody. Thank you for saying hello in English, because obviously I do not understand Vietnamese writing, so I can't read whatever you're saying unless you write it in English. But that's lovely. Thank you. You're all saying hello. The other way you could greet me is by switching on your cameras so I can actually see your faces and I'm not speaking to rectangles. So if you could switch your cameras on, that would be nice. Maybe later we have to switch the cameras off because of the connection, but it would be nice to see some faces for a moment. Very excited to be talking to you about project-based learning. It's something that I've been doing for, wait for it, 50 years. Hi, Hyde. Hello, nice to see your face. I've been teaching since 1972, and I have taught in Singapore for 3 years, in state schools and in teacher training. And I've been to Saudi Arabia for 2 years, and I've taught in Spain for 6 years, and now I'm in Argentina. And I've been a teacher of kindergarten, primary, secondary, and adult. It's afternoon where you are, but it's early morning where I am. It's 4:30 in the morning. So I got up at 3 this morning. Oh, is my sound low? Is this better now? Ruby, is my sound low?
It's okay now. Yeah, I can
It's
hear
okay.
you clearly. Yes.
It's okay, understood.
Perfect. Okay, great. So I hope you're all ready. Let me see if you're strong. Are you strong and ready to learn? Because this is the important thing. One of the great things about project-based learning is that it's very, very motivating. So I'm going to share my screen with you now, and I'm going to start our presentation on project-based learning. Okay. Tell me if you can see my screen. Are we on? Okay, Ruby?
Yes, we can see it clearly, Susan.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so project-based learning in the Global Success series. First of all, I'm going to start explaining the benefits of project-based learning, what it is, and how we do it. And then I'm going to go on to working out with you how you can use your Global Success series and blend it with project-based learning. So why should we do project-based learning? Basically, because we are now living in a project-based world. We're living in a tech world. We're living in a fast-changing world. And it's incredible how things are changing. Many of you are not as old as I am, but I have seen such incredible changes in my lifetime. And it's quite hard for some of us to keep up with it and work at the same time, because we have to be learning. We have to be lifelong learners. And this is what project-based learning helps you to teach your students to be, and to be it yourself. I'd like to know why you came here today. So if you could write in the chat box for me, please, and just say, why did you come here today? We have more than 1,000 people here, which is quite incredible. But I would like to know what you want to learn. What is it you want to do with me this morning, or this afternoon in your case? So if you'd like to write in the chat box why you came here today, please. In English, please, so that I can read it, or if Ruby can translate for me. People are writing things, but I don't understand what you're writing. To get to know more about PBL, okay. To learn the method of teaching English, how to teach English, okay. To get experience, good, that's lovely. Learn how to teach projects, okay. Thank you. Vuong, I love your names. I want to learn, I want to instruct, let me see. To get to know how to teach well, to teach project-based series, good. How to guide students doing project, yes, they need a lot of guidance. Use global success series effectively, this is good. Many new ways to teach this book. Okay, yes. Some tips from my experience. I have lots of experience. To learn about teaching methods of PBL, how to teach better, how to teach project well, how to teach project lessons, one way how to apply methods of teaching English. Very good. Okay, that's fantastic. I hope I can meet your needs today. First of all, I would like you to take pen and paper. I assume you've got pen and paper. If you haven't, run and get some, please, because the only way you're going to learn how to teach better is by learning. And you learn by doing, and by doing, I mean thinking as well. So get a pen and paper, please. And I want you to complete the KWHLAQ chart. And this is a chart that you can give to your students, and I will send the link to it to Ruby probably tomorrow. I would like you to write down for K, I want you to write down what you think you know about PBL. What do you already know? Because I don't want to tell you stuff that you already know. So write down on your piece of paper, or you can do it in the chat box if you want, what you already know about PBL. You are here to learn about PBL, so you must know something. So what is it that you actually know? And then what is it specifically you want to know about PBL? That's the W. So not just generally, I want to know about PBL, but what specifically you want to know about it. And then I want you to fill in column 3, which is, how do I find out? Well, one way is being here today, and another way is what are you going to do after you've done this very short 2.5-hour session with me? So what do you already know about PBL? And then the other columns are what you would do at the end of the session or the end of a course, which could be 6 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, 6 months, a year. I could teach you for a year about PBL. So I'll give you some moments to think and to write. This is what we call think time. And it's vitally important that you give your students think time. So this is one graphic organizer to put in your toolbox. Right, I hope you're all writing avidly. So our questions for today are these. Why do PBL? I've already answered that really, because we live in a project-based world. Everybody's doing projects. What is project-based learning? How does it differ from traditional classes? What are the benefits? What are the challenges? How do I plan for successful PBL? How do I implement PBL? And how do I blend PBL with my textbook? So I'm going to divide this talk into 2 sessions. The first session is going to be theoretical, and I'm going to be doing a lot of talking. So I hope you're going to be taking notes, and I hope you're going to be thinking about everything that I'm telling you. And then the second part is how do you blend it with your textbook? I'm going to show you a very, very short video now. And it is really, really short. But I want you to write down how this classroom is different from traditional classrooms in terms of 1, the layout, 2, the teacher's position. Where does the teacher stand? Where does the teacher move to? How much talk time there is for students, and how much talk time there is for the teacher. And what is the decoration like in this particular classroom? So I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to switch on the video. So please, Ruby, will you tell me if you can see it and if you can hear it?
Okay.
Can you see it?
Think about this conversation. What did you learn from this?
No,
You can't see it. Okay, I'm going to go back then.
Oh, some people can see it, but I can't. Oh, some people say yes, they see it.
Can they hear it?
Okay. Oh, some say no, some yes.
Okay, let me do it again then.
Okay.
I'm going to share again. I'm going to go back into Zoom and I'm going to share again. Because I think with so many people on Zoom, it may be tricky.
Maybe. Okay. Yeah, I can see it now.
Now you can see it. Okay, good.
Yeah.
And I'm going to share my sound with you so that you can hear it well. Okay, I'm going back to the beginning. Okay, so it's not a really good video in terms of the quality, but it's a really good short video in showing you what PBL looks like. So we're now looking at a real classroom where PBL is in action.
What did you think about this conversation? What did you learn from this? What did you learn from each other that you didn't know before?
My name is Shazia Parani Melstrom. I teach at Brooklyn International High School, a school for newly immigrated students, and all of my students are English language learners. I teach English language learners through a project-based curriculum, and one thing that I think works really well is using learning groups. I believe that through this interaction, students not only advance their language skills, but also learn how to be better critical thinkers by examining material together and sharing various perspectives. The more students have the opportunity to interact with one another in the classroom through collaborative activities and experiential projects, the more their academic English skills will grow and deepen. Ultimately, it's my goal to help students maintain their native language and their cultural traditions, as well as strengthen their English language skills and adapt to the United States.
It was kind of a little hard for me doing the translation in Spanish because I don't know that much, and there's some words that really confused me and I didn't even know how to say in Spanish. So by doing this newspaper, it made me develop more how I translate, how I write or read Spanish.
This type of service learning project enables students to feel a sense of empowerment and feel that they are making a difference in their communities.
Okay, you can see it's very, very short, but it's, yeah, very good. Thank you, CHUYên. It's about group work. And this is something that's essential for doing project-based learning. The teacher, where is the teacher standing? It's actually in a secondary school, yes. And you can see that the teacher isn't necessarily standing at the front of the classroom. She's not on her stage and the students are not in rows. It's flexible, very good. Yes, they're a group, they're doing group work. There are leaders in the groups that are using worksheets, and the teacher sits with each group, talking to each group personally, having a conversation. And so I think this is one of the things that I need to really explain to you today, that basically we're talking all the time about group work. And I'm going to show you now what some of the reasons why it's so motivating. Daniel Pink, in his TED Global talk in 2009, said, people are intrinsically motivated by three things. And those three things are purpose, that's what are we working towards, having autonomy, or now we use the word agency, and getting the mastery of whatever discipline you are teaching. So in project-based learning, what we do is we put all the subjects together. Project-based learning must have at least 3 different disciplines involved in it. Otherwise, it's not project-based learning. So in English language teaching, we have a basic problem because we don't have content. We are teaching skills. So present tense, for example, is not content. There is nothing there for the students to hook onto, to feel that something is intrinsically interesting. So it's very hard to motivate our students. Basically, PBL comes from John Dewey, Vygotsky, Lev Vygotsky, and Piaget. The 3 of them, I hope you've read all of them. If you haven't, look them up on internet and read about them. I can send you links if you want them. And you will find that all 3 are actually constructivists. They believe that students construct their own learning and put it into the schemata of their brains. So they believe that people were not born to be taught. People were born to learn. And we learn through doing. We learn through discovering. We learn through exploring. And that's why I love PBL so much. The other great thing about PBL is that it blends very, very well with the 21st century skills. And I don't need you to understand this very, very complex diagram. But what I do need you to do is to look at the orange bridge at the top of this semicircle and look closely at the learning and innovation skills, otherwise known as the 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. So in PBL, you are doing those 4 skills. I don't know if you noticed, but the teacher in our little tiny video talked about critical thinking, and that's why she liked project-based learning so much. I have always believed in my teaching, in my philosophy of teaching, that we need to teach confidence first, fluency second, and accuracy third. Now, this probably goes against the grain for many of you, because most of you probably believe that it's very important to teach accuracy first. I do not believe that, and I'll explain to you why. If we concentrate on accuracy, we frighten the students. The students believe they've
Hi,
got
Susan.
to get...
Susan,
Yeah.
can you share the screen again? The PowerPoint again?
Oh, am I not sharing? Oh,
Yeah, sorry to disturb you. Sorry.
no, thank you so much. I thought I was sharing. Oh my goodness me. I'm sorry. Thank you for telling me. Okay. Let me see now. Please tell me, yes?
Yes, I can
Yes.
see it.
I'm going to go back because you probably didn't see the last screen, did you? This one, the Partnership for 21st Century Skills. Did you see that? Can you see it now?
Yes,
Yes. Okay. Did you see this one?
sure, I can see it.
Okay. Did you see this one?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh,
So
let me check with people. Some of them. Okay, sure.
are we okay? Yes. Are we
Yes.
okay, Ruben? Yes. Okay. So people need a purpose. They need to be given or bestowed autonomy or agency, and they need to gain mastery of whatever it is they are learning. So that learning is a process. It is not a magical action. You cannot teach somebody knowledge. They have to learn their own knowledge. And this is what, John Dewey and Vygotsky believed. They were constructivists, and they believed that people, anybody, learns by doing. They learn by doing it on their own with another person who helps them. That's the teacher. But you cannot give them your knowledge, because your knowledge is yours. Put your arms around yourself and say, mine, mine. Your knowledge is only yours. You cannot give it away, but you can facilitate learning situations. And that's what we do in PBL. So if you don't know about Dewey, Vygotsky, and Piaget, I will send you links to their work. It's vitally important that you understand constructivism. And here we have, in the orange bridge at the top, if you can see it, the learning and innovation skills, the 4 C's: critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and creativity. And I hope you noticed that the teacher in the video was talking about how she loves project work because it leads to critical thinking. And I have always believed in my teaching that it's confidence we have to teach first. We have to bestow upon our students the ability to be confident, because if they are not confident, they will never speak. And this may be something that you find in your classes, that your students are very reluctant to speak. This is what all my teachers tell me from anywhere in the world, not just Vietnam, not just China, not just Singapore, but everywhere in the world. People tend to think that Asian people are very quiet and very shy, but Argentine people are not shy and quiet, but our students don't want to speak in English because they are afraid of being wrong. So we have to get them to be confident to try. Then we have to get them fluent in order to be able to open their mouths and speak and communicate. Don't worry about accuracy at the beginning. This lovely girl is very confident, as you can see. It's a process. Do you have any questions so far? I'm going to stop sharing and ask you to put your questions in the box. Confidence first, exactly. Okay, any questions, please? You can switch your camera on and you can speak up. And Ruby, if you can translate, if there are any questions there. 19 participants have raised their hands. How to encourage students' confidence? Okay, that's a really great question. And it's one that I have worked a lot on over my 50 years of teaching. We get our students being confident by giving them the opportunity to speak. That means that we, the teacher, have to stop speaking. And we have to open up the space for our students to speak. And we have to give them lots and lots of games, lots and lots of strategies. And I have actually written a book about this, not with Pearson, with another publishing company, where I show teachers how to develop these strategies. Hi, everyone. Thank you. So yes, confidence first, fluency second, accuracy third. Ruby, we've got 20 participants with raised hands. Can you do something about that, please? I can really give you lots and lots of good ideas, but we need to practice them together. I'm not going to do them today because that's not what I've been asked to do, but I would be very happy to do something on how to get your students fluent. Okay, so let's move on. I can't read your Vietnamese writing, please believe me. Okay, I'm going to share. If you have questions, please ask them. This is your opportunity to ask. Please ask questions. Very, very important. So what are the elements of project work? Well, we saw a few in the video, but basically, number one, PBL focuses on a big and open-ended question. And this is what's really important about it. It is challenging. It should be a problem which the students have to research on their own and respond to and solve. So in other words, we don't teach first and then do project work. We do project work right from the very beginning. So we start with our question. And this is how students learn by doing. They were not born to be taught. They were born to learn. And then number two, it brings out what students should academically know from before. So in other words, we are using the word educate in the true meaning of the word. We are bringing out what they already know, what they already understand. And this brings their knowledge into focus. It brings it into the equation. Number 3, all of project work is intrinsic. It stimulates intrinsic curiosity. It's inquiry based, and it generates questions as it helps to the students to seek answers. So it's all questioning, questioning, questioning. It uses those 21st century skills of critical thinking, communication, collaboration, creativity, and allows for student choice and student voice. It provides opportunities for feedback and revision of the plan. Notice the teacher was sitting with the students, standing with the students, talking to the students. The students were talking to each other. So it's this interaction, this feedback all the time, which we do in real life, but which doesn't go on in very many classrooms around the world. I have observed thousands of classrooms around the world, literally thousands, and I have not seen enough interaction. It requires students to present their problems, to research processes, to look at their own methodology and describe their own methodology, and it helps them to look at their own results. So it works on not only cognition, but metacognition. And it aligns itself with scientific research in real world projects. And it must stand up to peer review and constructive criticism. So we are really working on basic problems in the world. Any questions, please? Please write them in the chat. And Ruby, just interrupt me all the time, please, if you have questions.
Sure. So the Vietnamese is just about their name and the school they come from. So the question, all of the questions are in English.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah. So ignore the Vietnamese language.
Okay, we've got a good one here from Lien. Vietnamese students have a problem of talking about themselves, and they have difficulties in expressing their opinions. Absolutely correct. This happens all over the world, and it's basically because teachers don't give them opportunities to speak. You learn to speak by speaking, just as you learn to ride a bike by riding the bike. We don't explain how the bike is made. We don't explain how to pump up the tires. We don't explain how to balance. We get the students on the bike and we run with them and we help them to learn to balance, and they fall off the bike. They make mistakes, but they stand up again because they are motivated to learn to ride the bike. And this is what we have to do within English. We have to motivate them to want to speak. And if they're not speaking, it's because we are not motivating them enough. And what are the elements of traditional teaching? Well, if you look at this picture in the top right-hand corner, you can see that we have a whole series of separate subjects, disciplines, if you like: English, physics, mathematics, chemistry, history, literature, and at the bottom we've got geography, which you can't see. And the desks are in rows with chairs around them, and the students are listening to the teacher, who is standing, well, you can't see the teacher, but we assume the teacher stands most of the time near the blackboard or the green board. So this is what traditional teaching and learning looks like. And I'm asking you this morning, or this afternoon in your case, what does your classroom look like? Please tell me in the chat box. Are your desks in rows? Are your students sitting individually? Do you tend to stand at the board? Please answer me in the chat. Is this what your classroom looks like? Do you teach English through English? Do you blend in the other subjects? So do you have, number one, large classes, sitting at desks in rows with very few resources around them? Are you one teacher alone in the classroom with many students? And do you play the sage on the stage? Are you the one with all the wisdom? And do you try to pass on that wisdom to your students? So tell me in the chat box in English, please. In rows, exactly. So that's the first thing you've got to change. You've got to get your students 1, 2, 3, 5, and 6. Okay, thank you very much. Large classes at desks in rows. Okay, so this, you can't change the number of students, but you can change the layout. That's at least one thing. Teacher is busy to talk and do. Okay, the teacher is busy telling the students. I know what it feels like, because you feel you've got a lot of work to get through. You feel you've got to follow the textbook. I am suggesting that you start with the project at the end of your textbook unit. And are your lessons timed by a bell? Are you just teaching English? Are you not blending in other subjects? Are you working independently, or is each student working independently? Are they studying by rote? Are you doing drilling? Are you doing copying? And are you doing lots of tests? And are you using academic subjects which are valued more than the arts? So these are all the things that in PBL you have to change. I'm sorry to tell you, but that's what this session is all about. So if you look in the word cloud at the top, you can see that project-based learning is complex. Students are learning knowledge to tackle realistic problems as they would be solved in the real world. The students have more control over their own learning, and teachers serve as coaches, not instructors. This is where we have to change. So I'm going to now look at the many benefits of project-based learning. I'm just going to check the chat again, just in case. Sitting in rows with more than 35 students, and sometimes you teach English through Vietnamese. Okay, that's one of the things. I'm glad you're being so honest. Can you give us the book? I can tell you where to buy the book, but I don't know if I'm allowed to. I'll ask Ruby later. Yes, I have taught in Singapore with 47 students in each class, 47 to 50 basically. And one of the things I think you should tell yourself, very, very importantly, you must teach English through English. That's really important. It's so difficult to teach them to understand the lesson. That's because you're teaching too much. You've got too much teacher talk. What you have to do is reduce your teacher talk time. I teach a lot in China. I've been going to China since 2005, and I'm now teaching online in China. And they have sometimes, I teach university professors to teach through English as a medium of instruction and to do interaction, to do games in the classroom, to do group work in the classroom. And it's very, very difficult. I'm so sorry, Hung. I can't help you about the rain. Okay, Lan Fuang, you've been teaching students project work for several years. Would you give me some suggestions? No, I'm not going to go into assessment today because that's not what I've been asked to do. It would be good to know how to teach students work, how to mark students' work. I know that, and I can send you some information. I'm going to write that down because I'm going to send some information to Ruby. There are lots and lots of ways. It's not difficult to teach English in a class of more than 40 students. I cannot agree with that because I have done that for all my life. In England, I had immigrants in my classroom, and I had 36 students in my class. And in Singapore, I had up to 50. And in China, I've had up to 100, even more than 100. And it really doesn't bother me, because I think there are ways of doing it as long as you use interaction and as long as you stop talking so much. So how do you increase motivation? By using project-based learning. You create a pleasant and supportive atmosphere. You establish the ground rules regarding the behavior and the norms that you expect in the classroom. You expect students to speak. You expect students to work together. You expect students to be willing to communicate. And you will only do that by giving them time and space. Encourage peer support or reading groups or discussion groups. Recognize individual pupils' interest levels. Recognize their skills. Recognize their strengths. They all can do much more than we let them do. Maintain and protect motivation through having lots of variety and breadth of tasks. What I see in your textbooks is that there's a lot of testing and there's not enough open-ended questions. Let them do self-evaluation. Teach them how to evaluate themselves. I have adapted this from Dawn Year from 2020. He has a lot of work out there on motivation, and I understand where he's coming from. I talk about 5 skills. Many experts talk about the 4 skills being integrated. I believe that you must teach thinking. Thinking skills underpin every single thing you're doing. And the strategies that I have used all my life involve thinking. The students have to learn to think fast, and they have to learn to think in English. If they are thinking in their own language, and particularly if you are using Vietnamese to teach English, you are encouraging them to think in Vietnamese. You have to encourage them to think in English, and you have to combine and integrate all the 5 skills. It's not good enough to separate them. As soon as you start separating them, you're putting things in boxes again. PBL is holistic. It leads to autonomous learning. Learners become responsible for their own learning. They learn the capacity to self-direct. And this is all to do with the 21st century learning. So you have to remove their dependency on you. You have to take them away from being dependent on you because they expect you to tell them what to do. Okay. Yes, you will have the slides in the PowerPoint after the seminar, no problem. Yes, we're already onto that, don't worry. You promote learning to learn. So you expect the students to do more outside school than what they just do in your lesson. If they think they can learn English just through having you in 1 or 2 lessons, I don't know, maybe you could tell me in the chat box, how many English lessons do you have per week and how long is each lesson? Maybe you could tell me that in the chat lesson. I've got a question here. Do you think students should prepare their lessons and do tasks before learning at school? Absolutely. You should do before, during, and after class. And you should guide them in that. But you shouldn't tell them exactly what to do. You should be asking questions. Help them to define their study skills. Teach them how to learn. Teach them how to do research, offer choices and decisions about content and methodology, and help them to develop their language learning skills outside school so that they can be independent. Teach them that life is a university, life as a university. How many lessons do you have each week? Please tell me in the chat box. Let me see. Nguyen, Jiang, I don't have enough time for projects. I must give my priority to looking back. I have no choice rather than ask my students to do the projects at home. Okay, this I think is something that you need to change. And this is what I'm going to explain to you more towards the end of this talk, or at least in the second part of this talk. Advantages of project-based learning are that they have explicit learning outcomes. So you need to produce a product. The students need to produce the product, but during class time, not necessarily outside class. They need to do it during lesson time and outside class. So for example, these are the questions. We need to ask bigger questions, not just the questions that are about grammar, not just the questions that are about vocabulary. Those questions are not project-based learning. And there are some schools in the world that only teach through project-based learning. They don't teach any other way. They don't teach by teaching. They teach through projects. So for example, big questions, the essential questions are: how can we improve our public park and let our government authorities know? So to go out into the public park, to research what's going wrong with the public park, and then to write real letters, real suggestions to the authorities in English. So you have to find some authorities who can speak English in your societies. And number two, how can we research, plan, design, build, and deliver in person or on Zoom an effective presentation on, and this is the important thing, a big problem, a big issue. Number three, how can we save an endangered species or solve an item from the climate change suite? Bloomberg, for example. How can we find a way to help the community in our district, in our village, in our town, in our city, in our country? How can we create a financial plan for a family? How can we improve cultural relations by studying and comparing different English-speaking countries? And this is something that the students themselves need to be researching, not being told by you. Yes, exactly, Tan Chao. You should ask students to prepare a project when they learn the first lesson of the units. You have 3 lessons a week. Okay, everything depends on how you use those 3 lessons. Keep the text, change the task. You should use experiential learning. Very good. Who's that? Futan. Very good. 3 lessons. All of you seem to have 3 lessons a week. Okay. Each class has 3 lessons a week. Okay. It's enough. What you must do is keep the time. The fact is that in Vietnam, we assess by pen and paper tests. So you have to concentrate on accuracy, specifically grammar. Okay. So you have to try to rally around that and you have to try to use a different kind of assessment. A unit has 7 lessons. Students study 3 lessons a week. The last lesson is looking back and project. Yes, the teacher should start on the project in the first lesson, and I'm going to show you how to do that. They have tests about grammar points. Okay, so we have to see what we can do about that. And I have always known that I have to do my students through, I have to teach my students through grammar. I have to teach my students through vocabulary. But I put that as a very small thing that I have to do. What I have to do more is to motivate my students and teach them lots more than what's in the book. Because what's in the book is the bare minimum. And unfortunately, very often, it's not inspiring for students. Now, there is a thought these days, and it's a big question, and there is no agreement about this. There is certain agreement that we have to do authentic tasks with our students. And those which are not authentic are the things which are typical school tasks, seen only by the students, their teacher, and maybe their peers. So to compose an essay, give a presentation in class, make a poster in class, make a model in class is not considered to be authentic these days in the 21st century where we are living. But we are talking about project-based learning with students who already speak English. So we have to work in the somewhat authentic area. We stimulate what happens in the world out of school. So we ask our students to play a role. We ask them to be scientists, engineers, advisors to the president, website designers. And we do that through doing a project. They are placed in a scenario that reflects what might actually occur in the real world. Or students could create products that are the kinds of products that people do use. So for example, they could produce a model in class, which is a model of products that people do use. To be fully authentic, you have to go out into the real world and you have to advocate for a cause or take action to improve their community or perform a service for someone, create a physical artifact to display or distribute or to express their ideas through the media. This is really difficult for our students. So I think that we are in the middle, basically. I see that some of you think that is very, very difficult. One of the nice things about project work is that very often students can involve their parents, even if they do that bit in Vietnamese, but bring it back to the classroom in English. So they have to work a lot on their own language, not necessarily translating. And that's where we have to really get them to be able to think in English. When the project is displayed, the parents can see it at open days and they can feel a certain ownership and pride if they have helped their own child at home. And when they pick up the learner from school, they may also have an opportunity to see it. What's great about project work? Look at these pictures. Look at the way people are working together. The content is discussed between the stakeholders. The stakeholders in the project work is everybody who's there. The methodology can be decided between the learners and the teacher and within the groups. Project-based learning is learner-centered. It is not curriculum-centered. It is not book-centered. It is not subject-centered. And what we have with this is bonding. We get together with our students and we all become learners in the classroom. Trust develops as an essential ingredient. And once your students feel trust, they begin to trust in themselves. So they need to develop speaking skills like persuasion, negotiation. Those are developed as you do it. You don't teach them it separately. It's developed within the project work. And you get a balance between fluency and accuracy. You tell your students, today I am going to be correcting you. We're going to work on accuracy in today's lesson. But then in another lesson, you say, I'm not going to correct you today. We're going to work on fluency. And this is how students learn to speak. They learn vocabulary through speaking. Yes, Chao Than, teacher guides the students and they should practice the project. And Pham Lan says, I often guide my students how to prepare for the project at the first lesson so that your students help. Yeah, this is really important, because if you don't guide your students to be preparing the project from the very first lesson, it means that you're not doing project work. So now, do you have any more questions? No, wait. I suggest that PBL is a break from routine. Routine is important, but we all need a break sometime. We need the chance to do something different, and that can be inspiring. A change is as good as a rest. So will you please just say in the chat box, if at this point, because we've been going for 1 whole hour already, would you like to have a change? Would you like to have a rest? Would you like to have a 10-minute break? Tell me in the chat box if you would like to have a 10-minute break. How Viet Vo has said yes. Anybody else who says yes? No. Yes, please. Yes, please. Yes, yes. Yes. I've only got one no so far. Another no. Great idea. Okay. We're going to have a 10-minute break. And so you can switch your cameras off. You can go for a walk. You can go to the loo if you want. You can go and get a drink. I'm going to get a cup of tea. And we'll have a good little rest. So I'm going to switch my camera off and I'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Okay, Ruby, are you going to time that?
Yes. Okay. So 10-minute break, right?
10-minute break, yes.
Yeah, sure.
It'll be 20 to 6 in the morning here. Okay, so break time. Off you go. I'm turning my camera off for 10 minutes.
So,
Hello, everybody. Time to be back now. Okay. Hello. Hello. Thank you. Nice to be back. I had a drink. I had a cup of tea. It's even early for my breakfast, actually. It's 20 to 6 in the morning. Hello, everybody. Wow, so many hellos. Lovely. Hello, 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 hello. Hello, hello. I wish I could say your names. You'll have to teach me later. Thank you. Okay, great. I'll share my screen with you. And we shall move on. Okay, I hope you had a good rest. So let's have a look at your, I hope you can see my screen now. Can you see my screen, Ruby?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, okay, great. This was one of the beautiful photos that you sent me, the little girl with the butterfly. This is a lovely picture for, for PBL, really. It's gorgeous. Okay, so let's look at the themes that you've got in your units. I've taken screenshots of the book map. You've all got the book. But we have great themes. I mean, the themes are no problem. The themes are great. What we need to do is to ask bigger questions. We need to ask more realistic questions in order to be able to do PBL. We've got hobbies, healthy living, community service, music and arts, food and drink, a visit to a school, and then we've got traffic, films, festivals around the world, energy sources, traveling in the future, and English-speaking countries. I noticed that in your book, your glossary shows the words in English and in Vietnamese. I don't think there's any problem with that. Some people say, oh, we should never have any Vietnamese written in the textbook. I don't agree with that. I think it's good because I think it's a good crutch for your students to be able to have the dictionary there at hand. You're going to have many challenges if you do real project-based learning because you have got to change your teacher role. And the students have got to change their role as well. They've got to become much more independent. And you have got to stop telling them everything. This is more traditional teaching. If you stand at the front and you tell them stuff, you teach them stuff, it's very difficult to motivate them. You have to ask questions first. And only through answering those questions in English will they learn to speak English. For me, the most important thing to teach them is the speaking, in fact. And that's the one thing that teachers all over the world don't do very well, because it's the hardest thing to do, actually, getting the students to be willing to communicate. You have to learn more management skills, because if you haven't got the students sitting at their desks in rows all the time, you've got to have eyes in the back of your head. You've got to have eyes on the end of your elbows. You've got to have eyes on the back of your knees. You've got to have eyes all over, and you've got to have ears all over as well. And you've got to train your students to do things on their own. You also yourselves need training and support. And I hope that Pearson will be happy to give you that training and support. I'm sure they will. You need to do more thinking and planning. This is true. And a lot of teachers say, I haven't got time. I'm too busy just doing my lessons as they are. And that is one way of holding up what I call the teacher's banner that they travel with all over the world, waving the banner. And on the banner, it says, I don't have time. All teachers say the same thing. And I say, stick to your time, stick to your text, change the task. It's very important that you don't keep testing students. It's very important that you let the students learn, that you give them space for thinking, that you give them space for talking. They have to be able to take risks, and you have to be able to take risks as well. And you are going to make mistakes. It's natural. It's the way that you learn. The prima ballerina does not become a prima ballerina overnight. She has to practice. She has to fall over. She maybe even gets a headache through practicing so much, but she has to bear that. You have to take risks and you have to make mistakes. You have to have a lot more collaboration. So the teacher is not separate from the students. The teacher and the students are in it all together. We are all in this together. And you have to build up your own confidence with using resources, including technology. You have to manage your time very well, and you have to help your students manage their time very well. Sometimes they're not going to finish, but they have to learn that. They have to be resilient and they have to be flexible. You are teaching them life skills in doing this. You are serving them well. You are being a real educator. You have to believe that there are cultures of conservative learning which you have to break down, and you have to take risks, and you have to learn to be more open. The standardized and frequent testing must be questioned, because with so much standardized and frequent testing, there's not enough time for the students to do the thinking that they need to do. You have to design your project very, very well. I'm going to give you some ideas about that. And you have to learn, as somebody asked me before, how to assess project work in different ways, because it needs a different kind of assessment. This is true. The design principles go like this. If you're going to do the real, fully authentic project-based learning, which, as I said already, I don't think we as English teachers with students who are not naturally English speaking can actually do. But really, you should be asking authentic, purposeful questions which lead to authentic and purposeful experiences. We have to draw a middle line here. There has to be deep integration with course content. You have to have at least 3 subjects involved in your project work. You have to develop meaningful and supportive relationships. In fact, I believe that is probably the most important thing. And you have to do evidence-based teaching and evidence-based evaluation practices. That's if you're going for the gold standard. Okay, we probably can't get that far, but this is the way we need to go about it. So I've reduced those real design principles to being something a little bit simpler. So we will be determining our objectives in each unit. And before you start the unit, go to the project and identify the end product. What are you going to have your students producing at the end? But instead of doing the project at the end, you're going to do the project right from the beginning. So number one, what do you want your students to learn by the end of this particular assignment or unit? What is your big question? Number two, what will they produce and how long will you need? Because I don't know how long you spend on each unit. You've got 12 units and you've got 3 classes per week. So I'm assuming each unit takes you, I suppose, 2 months. I don't know how long you spend on it. Maybe you can tell me in the chat. Determine the teams or the groups that you're going to have working together. And I believe that you should do that in consultation with the students. And I would say, keep your groups small. Say 3 to 5 if you've got 40 students. So you're going to have a lot of different groups. But if you make your groups big, it becomes too unwieldy. And if the students have got to collaborate outside school, it's much easier for 3, 4, or 5 people to meet than, say, 8 people. Then it gets unwieldy and there's all sorts of excuses that they're going to come up with. Establish your timeline. This is your number 4. How long are you going to spend on the project work? How often are you going to do it? What tasks are you going to set during each session? And what tasks are you going to set outside school? Students, when they start doing project work, in my experience anyway, tend to think, oh, I don't have to have it in until week 4, say. So they tend not to start. They tend not to do anything. And then suddenly, at the last minute, they're scrambling to get the thing finished. And that just doesn't work. So I am being totally practical with you here because I have got a lot of experience of doing this with non-English speaking groups. Some groups have been very, very weak. I've been in special education for 10 years of my teaching career, and I have used project work with special needs students. And they don't have any English. And many of them have terrible disabilities as well. But you can still do group work with them. You can still do critical thinking with them. You can still do games and projects. So think about your timeline very, very seriously. And think about it in terms of number 5, organize what actions they should take in each block of time. Make it very clear to the students what they've got to produce each lesson. So you're going to do pre-production, you're going to do production, you're going to work on drafts, and then you're going to have the finished product. And number 6 is presentation and assessment. And as I said, I'm not going to go into assessment today because I haven't got time to do that, and I wasn't asked to do that either. These are the questions, and I know they're very deep philosophical questions, but you've got to ask yourself these questions because they refer to what you believe about English language teaching, what you believe about education. Can there be teaching if there is not some kind of definable learning? So the learning has to be defined before you start. And what is the relationship between teaching and learning? How many times in your life have you heard yourself say, oh, I have taught that 17 million times and they still don't learn it? I have heard teachers say that over and over and over again. And I always say, that's because you didn't teach it in the way they can learn it. Because you have to teach to the students. You have to take into account students' needs. And you've got to ask yourself very seriously, when and how is teaching most powerfully enacted? When you do it this way, does it work as well as when you do it that way? And I would say time and time again that project-based learning, doing projects, is the only way to teach. And who or what is most responsible for the learning? Is it the environment? Is it the teacher? Is it the learner? Is it the community? Who is responsible for the learning? In the end, it's got to be the learner in collaboration with the environment, the teacher, the community. And how should we organize the teacher-student relationships so it works? So I know they are tough questions, but please ask yourself those questions, because it's only when you begin to know what you believe that you can begin to change. So let's look at Unit 3. In Unit 3, we have a project which is about greening our neighborhood. And the students are asked to think of problems and think of solutions and then talk to each other about those problems. Now, they have been fed a lot of language in the textbook, but I am suggesting that you start with the project without teaching them anything yet. And you have to look at the context of your project, and you have to do all of these things before you start. You have to make everything visual. You have to use shapes, colors, pictures, posters, videos, art. You have to fill your room with words, not just the words in the textbook, but the words on the walls, the words in books around the room. You have to have lots and lots of resources if you're going to do project work, especially if the project is making a model, for example. You need lots of extra resources. Do lots of hands-on activities, make everything feeling, make it concrete. Our students are concrete kids working in a wordy world. And that wordy world tends to be very abstract for them. We have to make the complex simple by making it concrete. Use real storybooks, use real articles, use real podcasts, use real newscasts, and move about yourself and keep the students moved on the inside. Have them being motivated by what you're doing, not saying, oh no, not this again, oh, this is boring. How many of your students say that? You can tell me in the chat box. Do your students say that they can't do English? Do they say that English is boring? Do they say that they've done that over and over again, and yet they still can't use it? This is what happens in most of my teachers' classrooms until the teachers change. Use each student's experience. Ask them lots of things about you. What did you do? What do you feel? How did you do that? Use we. We are going to, not they. So don't distance yourself from your students. Get in with them. We're all in this together. I'm saying it a second time. Use talk, dialogue, role play from the very beginning. Drama, educational drama. I'm not talking about scripts and theatre. I'm talking about improvised drama. Is a great way for getting your students to learn English. Use music, rhymes, song, rhythm, and sound as much as possible. So you can see here, we've got art. We've got all kinds of literature. We've got motivation. We've got what students do outside school, first-hand experiences. We've got drama and we've got music. And within that, we've probably got geography, history, maybe science and maths and social sciences. So this is how you have to think about your project. It has to be cross-curricular. It has to range through all the things that your visual learners, your kinesthetic learners, and your auditory learners need. So, what are the questions you've got to ask yourself? You've got to give yourself think time. What's the big question in this unit? So to take the small question, which is in the project at the end of the unit, and make it into a bigger question. What are your objectives? What do you want your students to learn? Well, the answer is obvious. You want them to learn the English in order to be able to speak, to write, to read, and to listen about this particular question. And of course, underpinning it all is thinking. You have to get them thinking. What are your end products? What do you want them to produce at the end of your project? How will you group them? What's your timeline? I'm repeating this, but this is how you have to think. What do students have to do in each block of time? So this is what you have to answer to yourself. And you should be able to make me a lovely presentation on that for each of your units. So let's look at Unit 3, which is about community service. So let's change the question into something bigger. Let's think. Let's ask our students, before we even start teaching them anything, give them the K chart to begin with. Ask them to write down what they already know. Maybe they will be writing in Vietnamese. If you haven't been using much English with them, they're going to be writing in Vietnamese. You've got to gradually move them away from that. But at the beginning, maybe they need to. And then you have to start getting them to think about it in English. It's a process, and it's not a quick process. It's long, it's very long. Jim Cummins from Canada, who's a bilingual expert, says it takes students about 6 years to get to their grade level in English. So we have to go surely but slowly. So ask your students, how can we improve our community? What are the problems in our community? Maybe you can take them out to school. I don't know if you can. I have always tried to give my own students first-hand experiences. I've always taken them to the park. I've always taken them out to look at how much rubbish there is on the floor, on the ground. I've always taken them into town on the train. And I haven't had such big classes as yours when I've done that, I have to admit it. But maybe you can just take them outside somewhere close. I don't know. I don't know what your authorities say. You have to tell me in the chat box. And then ask them, what are the solutions to these problems? And then you have to think about getting them to think about the costs of the solutions. So here we're bringing in maths. How can we do fundraising? How can we make advertisements to get our community to come together and to change? And what places are we talking about? Are we talking about our school? That's part of the community. Are we talking about our classroom? That's part of our community. And how long are we going to spend on doing each part of this problem? And what is our end product going to be? Can we bring in community speakers to talk to us, to tell us how we can improve, to tell us what people we need to talk to, how we can do it, what they would do? So bring in partners bring in speakers if you can. I have always tried to take the classroom outside of the classroom walls and bring the outside in. So take the inside out, bring the outside in. And then what are your roles and your duties and your responsibilities? This each group has to decide on for themselves. And they may not all be doing the same research. They have to bring their research back into the classroom and tell the class. And what are your resources for your research? You have got thousands of resources. When I was first doing problem-based learning and PBL, project-based learning, we had no resources. We didn't have internet. We didn't have Gmail. We didn't have WhatsApp. We didn't have anything. We just had ourselves and our class and some books. We had a library. We always had a library at every school I was in. And if our library was poor, I always asked for a budget to improve the books in the library so that we had an equal number of fact and fiction. So the students had somewhere to do their research. Okay, I'm going to look in the chat box. I think the most of difficulty teachers encounter is the level of the students. To me, I don't know how to help them to prepare the project at the end of each lesson. Can I help you? Yes, I'm helping you now in what I'm saying to you. You have to work at the level of your students. You can't jumpstart your students. And you have to start with the project. Don't end with the project. Because if you end with the project, you're not giving them enough, yes, very good. You're not giving them enough time to work on the project. How to apply group work or pair work. Okay, that would have to be a completely new session because I can't attach that to this class today because I haven't got that much time left. And I have some more work to do with you to suggest how to do it. I think Sim Huang, is that how you say it? T says, this is one of the teaching methods I like best. It's also a big challenge for me and your minor ethnic students. Yes, yes, it is, but it's a joy. This is what Dorothy Heathcote always said. Teaching should be a joy and a challenge to make learning a joy and a challenge. And that's why I'm so happy to be here. I know it's complicated. I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying it is the best way. It's the best way to teach because you're not teaching, you're educating and you're getting the students to do their own work. And this is what gives them the confidence and the fluency. And then later they can get the accuracy. I've always had amazing results in exams, but I've always worked like this to begin with and not gone for the grammar and the vocabulary first. I've always started with the project, always started with the question, because what we're doing here is that they are learning through the project. Like I believe they learn through drama. And teachers say to me, but they haven't got any language. Of course they've got some language, but you're not letting them use it if you don't let them use it. This is something that I have to convince you of. And it's only when you start doing it that you will see the results. If you keep saying it's very complicated, if you keep saying, I haven't got time, if you keep saying they have to do tests, then you'll never start it. Henry Ford, a very important man who designed the car, invented the car, if you like, said, whether you say you can or whether you say you can't, you can be sure you're always right. Because if you say you can, you will take the first step towards trying to do it. If you say you can't, you will never take the first step. It's just like I always say to myself, I can't win the lottery, so I never buy a ticket. So I never win the lottery. Maybe one day, if I said, I can win the lottery, and I went and bought a ticket, maybe I might just win. But I definitely won't win if I don't buy the ticket. Okay, I've got some people in the chat box. The students come from remote countryside and they will have difficulties. Yes, of course they will, but it's the only way to go. You will be serving them very, very well if you work like this. I don't mind where they come from. As I said to you, I've worked in special education for 10 years, and I've worked like this in special education. So I am teaching you about project-based learning. So that's what I am doing. These questions should be applied to any and all of the units. Look, you've got a very, very nice theme here. Healthy habits, healthy eating. And you can do a campaign in school, but you must start with the project. You've got a very nice theme here. You've got hobbies. Start with the project. Don't start with the text. Don't start with the teaching. Start with the asking. And you will find the dynamics will change. The thing is, I am trying to convince you of something that you don't want to be convinced of. And that's my problem. We're always afraid that our students are so weak they can't do it. But some projects they have done much better than. Exactly. There you go. You see, you have one of your peers saying exactly what I'm saying. They cannot speak as well as to do any project. You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. As T. Liu Tran said, she has been surprised. If it's a girl, I don't know if it's a girl's name. She has been surprised. We are always surprised when we take risks. And I can send you many links for you to watch. Your Tam Nguyen says, my students are dry ethnic minority. They have little English. It's difficult for them to make a project, but you can help them. If you decide to help them, you can help them. You have to feed in resources, and those resources have to be interesting. The problem is that if you just do teaching, very often the students can't get motivated. And if they're not motivated, they won't learn. Motivation is key, I believe. And this is what I'm trying to convince you of. Look at this. This is a wonderful project to do. All your students can sing. All your students can dance. All your students can move. You can take your traditional music from your ethnic groups, and you can have them developing a traditional music night in their own language, but writing the invitation in English. You can do that project with them. I'm absolutely convinced that if you decide to do it, you will do it. I am giving you the solutions. The solutions is to try it. That's the solution. But if you don't try it, you will never get there. As Henry Ford said, if you think you can, you can. You can at least try and make a start. If you think you can't, if you're always looking for solutions, you'll never find them. You have to try it. You have to do it. That's the only way. I've convinced many, many teachers in my time to try it, and they have always been surprised. So please believe me. Do you have these apps available to you? I have used these apps with very, very weak students, especially Padlet, which I really, really like. They can do very small things on Padlet, and it really motivates them to go on, to get better, to go ahead. You've even got a recording tool on Padlet now. They can record words, even if it's only one word utterances to do with a theme that they are interested in. And this is the point. Themes are interesting. The present tense, the conditional, the past tense, adjectives, adverbs are not intrinsically interesting. And this is why you have to share with them all this brilliant world which is available to them, but you have to share it. And so I have come more or less to the end of my presentation. And now I would like you to start thinking about what you are going to do. And I would like you to ask me some more questions. But don't ask me those big questions, because I have already suggested to you how to start it. And I need you to ask specific questions now. And I need you to tell me, Vi is saying, I think we can base on her instructions to make a project related with a realistic locale where we're living. Yes. Students like Quizlets, exactly. Tell me about this Google form, please. I have some more time. I have some more time for you. Okay, I need you, before you go, I don't think you should go yet. I need you to do some work. I need you. Time management is difficult. I agree with you, Phuong An. Time management is something that I am working on at the moment with a group of teachers in a school here in Argentina. And I am working through it, starting with very, very small adjustments. So I'm getting them to time how much speaking they do in their class and how much speaking they get their students to do. You see, if you spend all class time speaking, then you are not going to be able to use the time properly, because you have got to get the students doing. If you don't get them doing stuff, they won't learn anything. So time management has to be done with you. Yes, I'll turn the PowerPoint into a PDF. I'm glad you're thankful. Ruby, can we get people to speak, please? I want you to speak.
Giang ơi, Giang, phần Q&A á, cô muốn là giáo viên trả lời qua voice. Mình có thể unmute cho mọi người không?
Tức là cô muốn là các thầy cô giáo sẽ tự nói đúng không ạ? Bật mic và nói đúng không ạ?
Để mình trao đổi trực tiếp ấy.
Vâng ạ, thế thì theo cái đề nghị của channel ngày hôm nay ạ, thì cô rất là mong muốn là được nghe trực tiếp các câu hỏi từ các quý thầy cô ở trên toàn quốc ạ. Thì bây giờ em xin mời các thầy cô nào mà có câu trả lời câu hỏi ạ, thì vui lòng là sẽ giơ tay ạ, để ban tổ chức sẽ mời các thầy cô đặt câu hỏi trực tiếp với cả báo cáo viên với channel, thì là sẽ được hiệu quả hơn ạ. Có thầy cô nào? Vâng ạ. Xin nhờ bộ phận kỹ thuật hỗ trợ giúp ạ. Dạ vâng ạ, thầy cô nào có câu hỏi thì xin vui lòng là sẽ giơ tay và mở mic, bộ phận kỹ thuật hỗ trợ giúp ạ.
Oh, Quan Pham, I would love to go to your area and join your class one day. That would be wonderful. Lots of people with that.
Dạ. Em có nhìn thấy giơ tay của một số thầy cô. Thứ nhất là ở trường ở Phan Thiết đã có trường xin lỗi, đây là trường em sẽ đang không được nhìn thấy rõ. Bộ phận kỹ thuật xin vui lòng làm mở giúp mic của đầu cầu ở Phan Thiết ạ. Trường Trung học cơ sở Trung học thông Lê Lợi ạ.
It would be a very good idea for Nagar Tran T for me to send you some examples of a rubric. I can do that because you need to have
Susan, Susan, I think that is quite difficult for the technical problem to have the teachers raise their voice. So is it possible that the teacher will send the question through the Q&A box, and then you will have an answer on the question of the Q&A box? Is it okay?
Yes, I would love the teachers to speak to me.
Yeah, but I know that, but there's some trouble with the technical issue, so it's going to be perfect to have the question in the Q&A box right now.
Okay. Can they not switch their camera on and switch their microphone on?
Yes, but actually it's quite difficult because there will be a little bit noisy when we open the mic. So I think that would be the perfect choice now to.
Maybe you could choose somebody with their hand up, and you could ask them, just them, to switch on their microphone and their camera and speak to me.
Yeah, I'm talking with the technical team, but first please help me to answer the questions in the Q&A first, and then we will so with the technical issue before we can have the teachers raise their voice.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you have any specific questions? I see that most of the teachers feel that they don't have very much time, and it seems to me that they are not used to getting their students to speak. And I think this is the very first thing they've got to do if they're going to do project-based learning. Yes, we're going to send the recording, aren't we? And we're also going to send links. I can send you plenty of links. The question is, who is that speaking?
So Susan, please have to answer some questions in the Q&A box. Can I read some questions for you? Like I got a question from teacher THCS that 1/3 of my students are ethnic minorities who are shy and never join any activities in my class because of lack of vocabulary, grammar, and they look like a white paper. So do you have any recommendations for the teacher?
Yes, exactly what I've said, that if you are teaching ethnic minorities and they are living in mountainous regions or living in the countryside, it doesn't mean that you can't do project work with them. It just means that you have got to start eliciting from the students what they already know. And if you're not doing that already, then it's too early to start project-based learning. The fact is that you have got to elicit from your students during every lesson, because if you're not getting them to speak, they won't speak. And it's up to you to start them speaking. If you don't motivate them, and if you don't set up a classroom environment where they feel they can answer you through the spoken word, then they are not going to do it. And this is something that every teacher tells me the same thing. Every teacher tells me, my students haven't got the vocabulary because they're special needs students, Or my students haven't learned any English. Well, teach them some English, but get them to always answer you. Because if you just do drilling with them, if you just do repetition with them, you're not teaching them any thinking skills. Vygotsky said that thinking and language go together. Thinking informs the language, and language informs the thinking. And it's only through doing that kind of work that you will get them to speak. And if you're not getting them to speak, they will not be able to do project work. You're absolutely right. And it's very important that we use our students' talents. And we don't just concentrate on the English language all the time. We have to let them sing. We have to let them dance. We have to let them do art. Tell them a story with pictures to do with that theme, and have them draw the pictures as you're telling them the story. Many of your students are going to be very, very good artists. Many of your students are going to be very good actors, but probably you've never asked them to act anything in English. Give them the opportunity. They will surprise you, I promise you. Do you believe me? You have to try it. If you don't try it, then you'll never get there. And some of your peers here today in the chat have said that they actually do try it, and they were surprised at how it worked. Ruby, are you going to save the chat so that you have something to refer to?
Yes, we will take some questions here and feedback to them after the share.
Ruby đặt câu hỏi cho em xin lưu ý một chút là đường link khảo sát của tập huấn hôm nay thì sẽ được gửi tới các quý thầy cô ở trong chat box vào cuối buổi này, và sau khi các thầy cô hoàn thành cái khảo sát này thì bên nhà xuất bản sẽ tiến hành cung cấp chứng chỉ cho các cô ạ, các thầy cô ạ, nên là các thầy cô vui lòng chờ đến cuối buổi để tham gia cái khảo sát sau buổi tập huấn này ạ. Cảm ơn các thầy cô ạ. Vâng, em mời chị Ruby tiếp tục ạ.
Yes, you're going to get the recording, don't worry.
Yeah, we have all the recording.
Yeah.
Also, I have one more question from the Q&A box. The teacher Dũng V asked that how to teach project lesson when we don't have enough time. So do you have any advice? Thank you.
It's the same question as before, really. Time isn't important. Time is not important. It's what you do with the time that you've got. If you spend all the time you doing the talking, then you cannot do project work. You've got to get to the point where you stop talking and where you let the students do the talking. We have a saying in English, less is more. And teachers find that really, really difficult to understand. Most teachers do too much talking, and therefore they don't allow the students to do any of the talking. And then they say the students don't know any English. But it's because they haven't let the students do the talking. So you've got to elicit. You've got to have elicitation as the core